people come in and they use this property this way. They will pay for this service, and this is how it goes to ultimately the business that flows back to the investor. And it's going to be pretty much the same mental model as the cash flows from the person who needs a service or property, makes a payment, it goes to the business, goes to the investor, right? And so that's pretty much it. And I mean, you can really apply this question everywhere.
Welcome to the Path to Passive podcast, where we talk about building wealth and empowering lifestyle through commercial real estate investing for tech professionals. I always wish that other tech professionals reaching financial freedom had documented their journey along the way, so I'm doing it for the rest of us. Join us as we explore stories, many failures, and lessons learned along the way. I hope you enjoy and subscribe.
Welcome to the Smart Tech Investor mini-series. Today's episode is all about that question every investor should be asking, which is, where does the money come from? Now, this came out of a real conversation I've been having with a few folks in Amazon, as well as some friends. And, they're sharp people who have built careers in systems, infrastructure, logic, in tech, of course. But they're ready to invest, but they're kind of get stuck here and there as we talk about different asset classes, especially those that might be in funds. Not because they aren't smart, but because they didn't have the time to learn about all these different asset classes yet and to evaluate all of these classes and how everything gets paid. And so as I was talking about these different asset classes, I was whiteboarding, I was drawing over, our virtual whiteboarding, of course. I started to see these patterns of thinking about, well, let me give you all the background about this asset class. Let me tell you about, apartments. Let me tell you about the capital stack. Let me tell you about all these different background. And I'm like, okay, to understand this, you just have to ask yourself, where does the money come from? So that's what I really want to be focusing today. And I thought what I could do is go through a couple of these asset classes. Again, multifamily apartments, self-storage. We'll be talking about industrial warehousing, retail strip malls, land development, mobile home parks, etc. Just to give you an idea about some of these more common classes so that you can get that idea and see how it relates, so that next time when you are learning about some different asset class for the first time, you can remember that question, where does the money come from? And you can start to see all the different ways that revenue comes in and how ultimately the business gets paid and how you as the investor get paid as well. All right, so the real question is, where does the money come from? Now let's break it down with real examples and some simple explanations. And like I said, I'm going to go through these other asset classes here, or a few of these asset classes. And what I'm going to do is follow this standard format, which is the problem that the tenant has, or the consumer, right? The problem that is had by the person interested in that asset, the solution that the property provides, in this case, the way that the money comes in, or they're paid or paying, and then how the money moves, and then how the investor gets paid. So that's the general format that I'm going to be following. So here's the first one. Multifamily apartments, pretty straightforward, right? I use this as the first one because chances are you've lived in an apartment, and definitely if you're, have moved to one of the major metros, Seattle, New York, San Diego, Dallas, Austin, wherever, right? Especially for tech, you have probably moved in, been in an apartment at one point in your life. And so everyone knows what it's like to, have paid a mortgage or a paid rent, which is why it's so relatable. So pretty straightforward. The problem is the tenant needs a place to stay, right? Ideally, something that's safe, clean, convenient location, something like that. So the solution the property provides is a managed space with predictable rent and maintenance, right? So why you pay, shelter is essential. The rent is the monthly fee for access to that stability and location. If you think about it, it's kind of like a managed service. So it's just kind of a funny, relatable thing there, right? How the money moves, tenant pays whatever the rent for the month. The operator, or your property manager, as we typically call them, the operator there, collects that money, pays the mortgage, the taxes, the insurance, the maintenance, whatever's left, right, per unit. or the total aggregate cash flow from all the units in that apartment complex, and that is that cash flow at the asset level. And of course, if you're investing in apartment complexes, well, how the investor gets paid here is the investor receives a share of that net cash flow, right? Usually distributed as that quarterly plus potential appreciation at that sale. So that's what that looks like. So where does the cash flow come from? Where does the cash come from? It comes from the tenant. Problem is, they need a place to stay. The apartment provides it to them, so forth. Of course. All right. Self storage. Maybe you've had self storage before. Again, this one is also pretty simple, but we're just applying this logic. Is that people have more stuff in space usually, and especially during transitions like moves or downsizing. Maybe they're moving to someplace else, or maybe they're getting ready to move, so they need to store something for a period of time, whatever it is, right? So the solution is a secure climate controlled storage unit near that home, right? So they pay for the convenience and that peace of mind, knowing that there's security, it's climate controlled. There's nothing to be crazy, like it gets super hot, ruins your, family photos, or, whatever types of stuff that you might be storing. So how the money moves, just like the apartment complexes, except that there's no tenants living there. It's just padlocks and key codes. So there's fewer expenses. And so here is that you're simply paying for that storage. And so pretty straightforward. The investor gets paid by receiving a portion of whatever the monthly profits is as distributions, and potential for that equity growth if that property is refinanced or sold, similar to the apartment complex as well. But people have stuff, they need a place to put it. Self storage. All right. But let's talk about some of these other ones as well: industrial and warehousing, right? Businesses need space for logistics, manufacturing, inventory, right? These are typically things that are, if they are for one of these, logistics, I'm thinking you store a lot of stuff so that you can move things. Again, classic, super classic. A really big e-commerce store fulfillment center might have something like a warehouse, right? Manufacturing might happen here. Things get built, they get put together, sheet metal, whatever, right? Of course, other types of inventory as well. Solution: large, flexible buildings on long-term leases, and it could be all types of flavors, right? I've talked about in the past, so I'm not going to go all of it in here, but there's all kinds of self-storage, there's all kinds of industrial and warehousing, and it could be purpose built to whatever types of business needs that type of thing, as well. There might be some warehouses that are much more outside the metro versus some that might be closer to the metro, so that there can be deliveries made in regional areas. And so why they pay? It's because businesses have to run operations close to the supply chain nodes. So where does the money come from? The money comes from the businesses that need that space for logistics, manufacturing, and inventory, right? So I gave that example. Think of things like FedEx, Amazon, whatever, right? They're signing long-term leases so that they can operate their businesses, right? So leases are, just like our self-storage and our apartments. There's a period of time where a certain amount is going to be paid based on that. And the thing with industrial warehousing is that it's usually done by a square footage basis, right? And there's other intricacies here too. I'm not going to get into here, things like triple net, based on who's paying for common area maintenance and stuff like that. But the point still stands, is that those would be different ways, different kind of, um, uh, features, paying for features, or part of the negotiation from the tenant to that asset class that would bring in potentially more or less revenue based on that contract. And just the same with things like self storage as well, right? It could be the money comes from the space itself that's being rented out, as well as any packaging or materials, and maybe additional, other access or whatever else is there as part of a contract to upsells. Retail strip malls. Problem is, local businesses need storefronts and foot traffic. Solution: small accessible units by busy neighborhoods. Why they pay? Location, drive sales. So it's the business. That's where the money comes from, right? So that's the thing. The way the investor gets paid: investors receive a share of that rental income, net of any expenses and may benefit from appreciation if that center gains value as well, right? So, it's going to be from it's really uh, where the money comes from is like people and businesses, but specifically, we can dive that layer deeper of where does the money come from, as in what products or services are being offered and being paid for. And so that's what we're talking about, right? Land development. Developers need land for housing, retail, or infrastructure. Raw land is purchased, zoned, permitted, prepared for sale or build. And why they pay? Because developers looking to build homes. It could be stores or industrial space and profit from that resale or that rent whenever that development is actually done, or there's some kind of entitlement, like making the land ready, right? So that it can be that land can be prepared and moved to who's ever next to do something with it. And so, how the money moves, an example might be, someone buys 10 acres for, let's say, $500,000, rezones it, goes to the city, does a whole bunch of paperwork, entitles it, talks to engineers and other people to get all the surveying and thinking about like what can we do with this land. That's what that entitlement is, right? And then it resells to something like a builder for 1.5 million in 3 years later. And so going from that original 10 acres for 500K to 1.5 million later on, that's how profit is made. So money is moved there by adding value to that piece of land, and people want that get a piece of that additional sale. So in this case, investors may not typically get a regular income, but they'll participate in a lump sum profit when that land is sold or developed. Again, where does that money come from? Why would someone buy this thing? What value does this asset or does this this product really provide? All right, and then finally, my last example here is just something like mobile home parks and RV parks. Right, many families can't afford bigger traditional housing, so so the solution is, they own the home, but they rent the land. That's basically what these are: mobile homes or recreational vehicle RV park flats, right? Slats. And so why they pay is because they own their house, this personal property or that RV, and they need a place for it to be on. And so they pay because there's affordability and stability in that piece of land that they're on, right? So it's really land for rent if you think about it. So that money moves is that, if the owner operator owns the land, not the particular structures, but the tenants maintain their homes or those RV parks, right? So if there's, let's say, like 80 lots as an example, or 80 slats, and we'll just say something like $500 a month, that could be $40,000 of monthly gross income if all of them were covered. But we're just doing simple math here. So how the investor actually gets paid is that investors receive that cash flow through that distributions, right? And as usual, from the others too, is that any potential long-term gains through property improvements or refinancing can go back to the investors as well, provided that's how the deal has been structured. But where the money comes from is coming from people, the tenants having their housing on those flats. They're paying for that land, renting that space out, and that's where the money comes from. Additional monies could be coming from if there's stores. It might be that they're coming there and there's experiences on the land and the property as well. Could be a common one. Maybe they're charging for internet, maybe they're not. Other things like that. And so when you're asking that question, where does the money come from? That's it. It's not just the land, but experiences and shops, dryers, washers, whatever else. So where the money comes from, that's really how you can ask that question. Like, how do I know this actually makes sense? How do I know this is something I would want to invest in? Well, if you can understand that people would want to go to one of these places, right, for an apartment, to have some place that they need to stay that solves a problem, or would have additional stuff that they would want to house for a period of time, self-storage, or if businesses have industrial or warehousing needs, or businesses need to sell stuff at retail strip malls, or land needs to be developed in such a way where it can be prepared and ready for housing or something else, then now we can start to see where the money is coming from. And so that is the point. And that's why I wanted to do this episode, because sometimes it becomes way too complicated. And I know I've done episodes with speakers, guest speakers that talk about their asset class in particular. And so if any of these things I talked about you want to go deeper into, you can definitely check out the episodes on those. They're going to be a lot deeper and talk about more nuanced topics, maybe about the actual acquisition of them, or it could be on property management, it could be on asset management as an example, and so forth. And so, even if you're finding this helpful right now, you want to learn more, you can go to the website, maritacapital.com, check out the newsletter, subscribe there, and we'll make sure I send you newsletters and podcast episode directly to your mailbox every 2 weeks. So this is just the skinny on this. So when you're looking at different asset classes on the future, you can start asking yourself that question. Hey, where does the money come from, to help you understand and get those answers from whoever you're talking to about, people come in and they use this property this way. They will pay for this service, and this is how it goes to ultimately the business that flows back to the investor. And it's going to be pretty much the same mental model as the cash flows from the person who needs a service or property, makes a payment, it goes to the business, goes to the investor, right? And so that's pretty much it. And I mean, you can really apply this question everywhere, right? It could be a curiosity tool even. It could be a clarity tool that forces you to trace the economic engine behind every opportunity. You probably heard that thing of follow the money. The more specific thing in my mind is, where does the money come from? Because when you know that, you know how you get paid as the investor. You can also see how the business collects revenue, and ultimately how it pays out value to its shareholders as an investor, right? So some deals pay fast, others pay much bigger. Some are stable, others can be riskier, but all of them make more sense when you start asking that question. So you could be asking yourself right now, what do you want your investments to do right now? And are you optimizing for income or appreciation? And what are you willing to wait for? And do you want your money working for you right now, or do you want a bigger return for yourself later? These are particularly important questions to ask when you're thinking about cash flow. Maybe you're looking to replace more of your income, or to help match that income from your job, your W-2 right now. I know that's a priority for me, because I want to get more and more cash flow to build that up for myself. I've invested in other deals, but I want to get more cash flow because it's just how I'm prioritizing my asset allocation right now for my goals. And so, like I said, if you want to explore more of this, and you want to learn more about it, please head over to my site, aritacapital.com. You can go there. You can even fill out a contact us form. I'd love to jump on a meeting with you, see how I can help you clarify your goals and what might be a good fit for you. So next up, I'm going to be doing an episode about why I'm prioritizing getting paid in 90 days instead of waiting 5 years. That shift flip how I think about really financial freedom in general, risk and results, and something that I've been asking many of the guests that come on as well. And so if you want to hear about that, definitely check out my next solo episode. And if you have questions you'd like me to ask guests as well, please let me know. You can connect with me on LinkedIn. That'd be a great place. Or you can shoot me an email at steven@aritacapital. I would love to hear from you. Thanks so much, and I'll see you on the next episode. Bye.
Thanks for joining us on another episode of Path to Passive. We love connecting with our listeners and those on the path to architecting their wealth and improving their lives. Feel free to let us know what topics you'd like to see in future episodes. Get in touch with us through email or Instagram. See you next week for a new episode.